Next on News Talk AM 1480, WLEA, the Newsmaker Show.
Good morning now to Dr. Robert Heineman.
Well, you are filling in very well, Brian. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I got here in time. Yes.
Well, goes without saying that we can't ignore the state news on the first story today. Sheldon Silver, the New York State Assembly Speaker and a longtime powerful Democrat who some say was more powerful than the governor, arrested at 8 o'clock Thursday morning by the FBI.
Yes, well, that's certainly a front-page story. You're right about that, Brian. I think the one thing we have to do is defer to our fine colleague Bill Nojay for most of the inside analysis here because, of course, that man is on the inside.
He is, and, one of his goals was to do a coup against Sheldon Silver. But, and I said to him, I talked to him just before the 8 o'clock news on Thursday morning, and I said, Bill, did you have anything to do with this? He said, not me. And he was serious. He said he had nothing to do with that one.
Well, it's obviously something that the federal district attorney has been working on for some time. I think it does raise a lot of issues, and in terms of the bigger picture, which we can look at, and again, I defer to my good friend Bill Nojay on the inside analysis because you can believe that rumors are swirling around Albany, and this weekend will probably be a pretty wild affair up there.
Nojay told me before we went on the air on the 8 o'clock news on Thursday morning that there was no replacement for Sheldon Silver, that they have nobody waiting in the wings that's prominent.
Yes, well, I think that's one thing about Silver that we should look at. What's happened here is what often happens in these kinds of situations, and that is the man has been in power for so long and has had such an absolute grip on power that the idea of grooming a successor, I think, probably has never crossed his mind. And frankly, probably doesn't even care about grooming a successor. So the situation is that you undoubtedly have a lot of people scrambling this way and that. Now, what good is this going to do the Republicans? Well, your first response might well be, it's not going to do them any good at all. There's so few Republicans in the state assembly. And I think our listeners should be aware the number of state assembly people, I guess, is 150. That is set in the Constitution. So they can't raise or lower that number by legislation. The state Senate, on the other hand, is not. So they can increase the size of the Senate, and they have the past 10 or 20 years from 60 to 62. But so you have 150, and I think the Republicans have only something like 43 or 44 members. So they're nowhere even a third of the membership in the state assembly. And the idea that somehow with Silver stepping aside, the Republicans are going to gain, I don't know, I think that's kind of far-fetched. On the other hand, if you have, let's say you have 2 or 3 Democrats scrambling for power, one or two of them might be willing to reach over to the Republicans and say, look, if you guys will kick in behind me, that's going to give me the, 150, they're going to need 75, 76 votes to capture the speaker. Now, I believe maybe 15 years ago, there was a revolt against Silver, and something of that sort happened, that a number of the Republicans were talked into voting for a Democrat challenging Silver, and Silver undercut them pretty effectively, as he does. And after a year or two, the insurgents against Silver and the Democrat Party just disappeared from the assembly. He just hounded them out. So it's possible the Republicans will be able to be kind of a bargaining chip. It's also possible that if you get whoever the new assembly leader is, and I assume Sheldon Silver is going to step down, it could well be a lot more sympathetic to Republicans. Up to this point, in the last few years, Republicans could not even introduce legislation on the floor of the assembly. In the past, you could introduce legislation, sponsor legislation, and you'd probably be defeated, but at least you could sponsor something. In the last few years, my understanding is you couldn't even put legislation on the floor. So the control has been ironclad, and it's possible with new leadership the control could be a little more flexible, a little more willing to go along with the Republicans. Maybe not, but I would think probably the Republicans gain a little something from that. But the power is going to be downstate, I think. Joe Morelli in Rochester is in the leadership positions, and again, Mr. Nojay would have a much better idea of all this. And he may have, well, I'm sure he does have some aspirations there, but who knows how this is going to break out.
Aspirations for other people. He does not, Nojay, does not seem to have high aspirations for himself as far as running for higher office.
Well, I think anybody in his position has to be circumspect about his ambitions. So I think years to come, he may well be looking at perhaps a state Senate spot, something that may perhaps even a congressional seat. And in fact, that's how no, that's not quite true. But years ago, he was looking at running for the state Senate or the Congress, but was undercut by Steve Menard. That race was Cool ran.
Okay.
And Cool ran for Congress and won. And Nojay was clearly undercut by the Monroe County Minions, who it's kind of interesting there because Mr. Menard, who was in charge of Monroe County Republican politics and politics generally, was interviewed for 2 hours by the FBI on Good Friday and then died of a massive heart attack Easter morning. So the federal authorities can cause a lot of damage in pretty short order.
State Senator George Winter, when he was still in the state Senate, said on this station that Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver pretty much, he didn't use the word rigged, but that's what he meant. Rigged the district map for the New York State Assembly so that the Democrats would have control for a very, very long time.
Absolutely.
If Silver is out now, is it possible to get a Democrat in there who might be more bipartisan and sympathetic to the Republicans? It might change that map.
Only if the Republicans are in kind of a bargaining position. There's no reason whatsoever that the Democratic leader would be willing to change those districts. And Silver, of course, has worked to keep those districts solidly in the Democrat column. But Steingut before him is, I think, really the guy who first did this and rigged the assembly. The assembly is rigged so that the chances of the Republicans ever taking control of it in our lifetimes are pretty minimal. So the other thing I think we should look at here in this whole situation, and again, Shelley Silver may be exonerated here, but I would guess coming against him as Mr. Beharra is and the federal prosecutor, he's probably has some pretty solid evidence. He's not going to be charging this guy unless he's got a pretty solid case.
Preet Bharara, the federal U.S. attorney.
The attorney,
right?
Yes, who has lost some cases. And, of course, and I don't want to get off subject here too quickly, but as you know, doggone it, the majority leader of the state Senate for many years,
Joe Bruno,
was prosecuted as well under this so-called honest services section of Federal Criminal Code and was, in fact, exonerated. And what's interesting in that case is most recently the state attorney has held that the state has to reimburse Mr. Bruno, I don't know, several $1 million in legal expenses because maybe it's a federal attorney because of the charges brought against him. So it's possible that Silver could be exonerated. He's innocent until proven guilty. But the more interesting aspect of this is what it does for Governor Cuomo. And I'm sure Governor Cuomo is not going to be rushing full bore to Sheldon Silver's defense because this makes Cuomo really the kingpin in New York State politics.
Will Cuomo be an influence on who the next Assembly Speaker is?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it'll be a Cuomo guy then?
I would, if he can do it, it certainly will be. Yes,
which you can't blame him for.
Oh, absolutely not. That's clear politics.
That's the way it works.
And at this point, he has the state Senate in his back pocket. The Republicans basically turned over for Cuomo in the last election, and in response, I believe there are 3 state Senate seats in Long Island where Cuomo basically undercut the Democratic candidates, and the result has been that the Republicans have a clear majority in the state Senate now for the first time in a few years. So Skelos, the majority leader in the state Senate, even though he's a Republican, owes quite a bit to Cuomo, and probably owes more to Cuomo than Cuomo owes to him, actually. So he's in pretty good shape there. And this, this gives him an opportunity to put somebody in there that be a lot more sympathetic and helpful to him. Now, the only other power then that stands in New York State politics that would go head-to-head with Cuomo would be who, Brian? Who's left out of New York State?
Well, you could be thinking about State Senator Dean Skelos.
No, I'm not thinking about a state senator.
You're not thinking about a state senator? State Controller Tom DiNapoli?
I'm thinking about a senator, Brian.
A U.S. senator like Chuck Schumer?
Like Chuck Schumer, yes. Yes, Schumer would be the only other source or position of opposition. And Schumer, of course, takes that pretty seriously. He doesn't like to be pushed around. So you're going to see Cuomo and Schumer, I think, go head-to-head. Maybe they can work together. I doubt it. So that will be interesting to watch work out now. But right now, if this goes the direction we think it's going to go, Governor Cuomo is a clear winner. Now, to add a caveat to that, of course, previous to the election, there was some indication that the federal attorney was looking at Governor Cuomo and his treatment of the Moreland Commission. And as you know, Cuomo set up the Moreland Commission to investigate corruption in New York State, a pretty humongous task, actually. And once the commission got a little too close to some things, apparently, Cuomo disbanded the commission. And the question, I guess, is whether he obstructed justice in some way or another by doing that. And there were some indications that the federal attorney was looking at that. In fact, I think the federal attorney acknowledged that they were looking at that. So are there going to be charges coming down against Governor Cuomo as well? I don't know. We haven't heard a thing about it since the election. So obviously this is going to overshadow anything for a while.
Preet Bharara probably would jump on a chance to jump on Cuomo if he could.
Well, I don't know.
You don't think so?
There's no reason for Bharara. Obviously, this guy is making quite a reputation for himself, so I don't know what his long-term ambitions are. But I think at this point the key is not political. The key is do you have a good case that you can make it stick? Because Bharara has lost a number of recent insider trading cases, and Joe Bruno came out all right as well, although that may have been a little before Bharara was a U.S. attorney. But there have been a few insider trading cases that have gone down the tank, and for good reason. I think the feds got way out of bounds here, charging people with insider trading when they happened to be sitting in a bar or something like that and overhearing a conversation.
Speaking of Wall Street, what do you think that former Governor Eliot Spitzer would say about the demise of Sheldon Silver?
Yes, well, I really don't care what Spitzer thinks about anything.
Spitzer was the one that said he was going to steamroll over Sheldon Silver.
No, I thought he was steamrolling someone else.
I think it was Silver.
Well, that's politics in New York State, but what was more interesting, you may have noticed, I think it was last weekend, the feds or the authorities in Washington, D.C. arrested Greg Anthony for soliciting prostitution. And I immediately thought of our own Eliot Spitzer. But so they arrest Greg Anthony, and, I guess justifiably so, I don't know. But here you have the governor of New York bringing a prostitute down to Washington, D.C., which it seems to me would also be soliciting prostitution. But apparently no need for a charge there in that situation.
If we could talk national for a moment
Surely.
And international.
Surely.
On the national front, the New York Times reports that Romney and Jeb Bush are to meet soon in Utah.
Yes, well, that's probably a good thing. How that'll come out, I don't know. I don't know they're particularly close friends. And so the idea of working together, I'm not certain. May well just be kind of a procedural meeting in terms of, do we want debates? Are we going to contest this primary? Are you going to step aside? His favorite son here or there? I don't know. I have no idea. I continue to think Scott Walker remains a bit of a threat there to the whole show. And the nice thing about some of these primaries is that the people will have the final say. So certainly Bush and Romney, two fine candidates, and Walker's fine too, as far as I can tell. I think at the national level, the international level, the more interesting thing is the invitation to Netanyahu to address Congress by John Boehner. And I just want to we're moving toward the end of the show here, so I don't want to leave this hanging up. But
yeah, I was going to bring that up, that Boehner did not consult with the White House before he invited Benjamin Netanyahu, and then the Obama administration's angry?
Yes. Well, I think you have to put, again, a kind of big picture look on this, Brian, and you have to understand that within the past week, the Israelis have killed a major Iranian general in Syria on a raid for someone else. I don't know who it was, a terrorist of some sort, I guess they felt. And they killed the terrorist as well as an Iranian general there helping the Syrian insurgents. And Iran is not going to tolerate that. Iran is going to come back against Israel because of that. And I think from Netanyahu's point of view, it's a good idea to be over here in the United States and letting Iran know that the United States still backs Israel, because we're in a position, as you know, where Congress is pushing the extension of sanctions against Iran. Obama is against that. And so there's an indication that Obama may well veto that attempt to continue or expand sanctions against Iran. So if Congress pushes that through, which of course Netanyahu's in here to push, so this is kind of interesting. You have Netanyahu going against the White House in Congress. If Congress passes that and Obama vetoes it and Congress overrides Obama's veto, I think that will send a message to Iran that they better not be too harsh in their retribution against the Israelis. But I think clearly Netanyahu is concerned that Iran is going to levy some retribution here for killing one of their generals.
On that topic, Bloomberg reports that the Israeli intelligence agency, the Mossad, has broken ranks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and they went behind Netanyahu's back, and the Mossad told U.S. officials and lawmakers that the Iran sanctions bill that in Congress, if they passed it, that would really mess up the Iran nuclear negotiations.
Yes, it will. I think that's absolutely correct, and that's why Obama is against it, because I wouldn't be surprised that we are making some progress with Iran here, and there's no reason we shouldn't. Iran is a powerful nation in the Middle East. They and Turkey are two Muslim nations, I think, which are fairly stable and fairly powerful, and if we can work something out with them, it would be a very good thing. On the other hand, from the Israeli point of view, Netanyahu's in particular doesn't seem particularly interested in doing that, and frankly, if he can, in fact, sabotage the negotiations, he may well feel that's the way to go. But I think right now, and this is fascinating, his ability to be sort of a majority leader in Congress now as a rendering opposition, to the White House. I mean, this is really strange.
Do you think that Boehner being disciplined by the White House on this issue, disciplined isn't the right word, but
no.
Being chided by the White House on the Netanyahu invitation, do you think that'll aggravate Boehner more against
I think
Obama or push Boehner more into the Tea Party camp?
No, I think that this is a rather clever move on Boehner's part, frankly, in terms of putting Netanyahu. Thank you. In place here and getting in a position where he can actually override an Obama veto. And if he's able to do that right at the start here of this session, I think it'll make it easier for him to get an occasional override of later Obama vetoes. So it kind of breaks the ice, so to speak, I think, from Boehner's point of view.
Alfred University professor of history, Dr. Robert Heineman, has been our guest here.
Political science.
Did I say history? That's
You did
Ostrauer.
say, yeah,
That's Ostrauer.
that's
I
all
confused
right.
you with Ostrauer.
I occasionally make a slip up too, Brian. But
By the way, there's a new musical out about Bill Clinton. It's an off-Broadway musical called Clinton the Musical. Have you gotten your tickets yet?
no, but if you can find me one or two, why?
It might be a good station giveaway.
It could be, yes. Another auction item, yes.